Hi. Good evening, everyone. First, first of all, Mark, thank you. You sound so great on mic. I mean, I was just talking to one of my colleagues that, his voice is just amazing. So great, first of all. And thank you for the introduction. Um, thank you. I know it's been a long day. We've been, here, the times are extended, flights all got delayed. So I think this is the last session, so I don't want to spend too much time talking about it. So maybe let's keep it interactive. If you want to pause me sometime and ask some questions, feel free to do that. If you look at, what I'm going to talk about, these are terms that I'm sure, heard about very often: automation, security, very, everyday terms for us. But I would kind of, start with certain elements a little before that, and then we'll step onto it. And as I said, feel free to contribute, and let's make it very interactive. Okay. Perfect. So first of all, why are we talking about this? I mean, why are we talking about IT, OT, IoT? I mean, 5 years back, would you be even thinking about having a conversation on OT or IoT? Right? I mean, we would be just focusing on IT, right? So the world changed so much that today, this is still a conversation that is required to be done. We need to talk about IT and OT today, right? Second, we need to understand where to start. I mean, there are a lot of things to do, right? In security, we are all busy. There are so many priorities, so many things to focus on. So it is important on where to start. And then we'll have a quick snapshot of the journey, get to Q&A. As I said, Q&A can be in between as well. So let's keep it interactive that way. Yes. So if you look at from a very simple problem standpoint, I mean, forget these numbers. If you ask me, Subbu, how many devices I have at my home, I cannot answer. Right? We don't know. I mean, it was very easy to answer that question 5 years back. Okay, I have 5 devices, 2 laptops, mobile, things like that. But today, if I have to give you a number, I'll struggle. I don't know whether it is 15, 20, whether it is an Alexa device, whether it's a smartwatch, whether it is a fridge, or I don't know. I mean, there's so many devices out there at my home. And if you extrapolate that problem to an enterprise like yours, those numbers are mind-blowing. So some estimates, 30 billion by 2025, double of what was thought in 2021. OT is coming into the fray. We have converging technologies. And today, every sector is concerned about it. It is not just the banking and finance. You have energy, you have manufacturing, you have, we've heard of a major attack on healthcare just a week back, right? So attacks are happening in every sector today. And if you look at, I think this needs a slightly double force, yeah. So if you look at all these environments, if you relate to any of the organizations that today we are working for, you may have an IoT environment. If you are into pharma or something like that, you may have a research lab, or you may have an R&D center, you may have IT environments. You have all different, or if you are running a healthcare organization, there would be patient rooms, intensive care units. All these different environments were actually islands few years back. They were completely independent of each other. OT was a different world, IT was a different world. Healthcare, no connection at all. But now they have started converging. They are no longer running separately. So if you look at all these things converging, what are the trends, the high-level trends? One is, of course, we all agree, right? There is tremendous growth of assets. The number of devices are increasing with a crazy number. We don't even know what is a number. And then we have distributed enterprises, we have solutions, and lastly, hiring people in cybersecurity. Hiring people in cybersecurity has been, I just give you my example. Early this year, for the first few months, I was focused on doubling my team size. And by the way, I found that as the most difficult job to have ever done in the past few years. The other things are much easier. So I'm sure we all agree that this is not an easy thing today. So we need to have a balancing act, right? I mean, we have attrition challenges, we have regulations, we have digitization happening, we have people leaving, we have device decaying. There are a lot of organizations like, 50,000 user organizations. There are so many devices, we don't even know where they are lying. What is happening? Has it been deprovisioned? No idea, right? So we have to have a balancing act. But the challenge is there are gaps, right? And there are gaps between, what we want to do and where we are. And we have to start somewhere. Again, a very, very, very common term, zero trust architecture. So I don't want to give you any perspective from my end when it comes to zero trust, okay? Not from Forescout. Zero trust as per what NIST framework says. So we have to start somewhere. Zero trust, of course, is a good, zero trust architecture is definitely a good approach to start with. So when you talk about something like zero trust and how do we start? So we've taken this framework. And as I said, this is a standard NIST framework, nothing to do with Forescout. So what does this framework say? It says something very simple. So any business is all about a user using a device to access some resource, maybe a data or an application. User, device, application. Now, the zero trust concept says that we don't trust anybody, right? We should not trust anybody. And that's why this side is untrusted. Now, how do we trust? So we need something in between to trust them, right? Which is a policy decision point and a policy enforcement point. Why are they split? Why is a policy decision point different from a policy enforcement point? Let me give you a very everyday example. I'm sure many of us live in apartments, right? In different apartments, and I'm kind of digressing from the IT world, but many of us live in apartments. There were times 5 years, 10 years back, there was hardly any security in our apartment. Nothing. Today, there's biometric access cards. There are physical access cards, iCards, which you can gain access. There are cameras. So your security watchman sits and looks into all of that. What does it say? We have applied zero trust in our apartments. We don't trust anybody who comes to our building. No one. But in applying that, if anybody is coming to our complex and we don't trust anybody, whether it is my father, my son, an Amazon delivery person, maybe a plumber or a carpenter or an electrician, we don't trust anybody, right? Anybody coming into the complex. But how do we enforce them? Can we give biometric to all? Can we give biometric to an Amazon guy? No. Can we, will biometric work for a senior citizen? It doesn't, right? In most cases, the fingerprints are not very accurate, especially for senior citizens. So my enforcement method needs to change. So entry into apartment, I don't trust anybody. Everybody is untrusted coming into the apartment. I need to have different methods of enforcing. I may use biometric, I may use iCard, I may use watchman's intelligence, I may call and take consent, so many things. So there are different enforcement methods, but there is one decision point. And so if you, and that one decision point also needs a feed. It's not that that decision point alone works. It works on facts and knowledge collected. So you have one decision point and then you have multiple enforcement options. Now, why do we need that in the IT world? We just spoke about devices, right? We just spoke about devices some time back. Now, if it was only this system in between, this one, then we were good. But unfortunately, that's not the case. We have different types of devices. And because we have different types of devices, we need different enforcement methods. So when it comes to devices, we have the same problem like an apartment. We have senior citizens, we have children, we have Amazon delivery guys. We have the same problem, in fact, much bigger. Hence, we need multiple enforcement points. We need multiple methods of enforcing. Here you can put an agent. Can you put an agent on an OT environment? Can you put an agent on a healthcare device? Can you put an agent on a printer, on a camera? So to actually have a zero trust architecture, you need to first of all cover the entire device landscape, or what we call as a digital terrain. I don't want to call it a landscape. It doesn't look so beautiful like a landscape. So if you look at this entire digital terrain, we basically need a platform which can cover all of these. Give you visibility of all that you have on this side. Give you enough information. Equip you with enough intelligence so that you become a decision point, and then use different enforcement methods. Enforcement method could be a cloud CASB. Enforcement method could be a firewall. Enforcement methods can be so many. So, but you definitely need multiple enforcement methods. So, key takeaways. First of all, if you look at it, we need to have visibility as a foundation. Like a very basic element. If we don't know what we want to protect, how do we actually protect it? The first element is we need to understand. As I said, visibility alone is not enough. So we need to double click. We need to get some more facts. If we want to become a decision point, we need more data. So on one hand, you have the visibility. Second, you get additional information about the traffic and what is really happening. Then, be able to support multiple enforcement options. Can one tool do that? No. You need a firewall. You need to enforce somewhere. Like I said, you need a biometric somewhere, an iCard somewhere. So you need a firewall somewhere. Maybe you need a CASB somewhere. So you need different methods, and that should be heterogeneous. That should support your heterogeneous environment. Lastly, of course, you would want to automate it. We all want to automate it. Like we want to simplify. Manpower is tough in cybersecurity. So we definitely want to automate all of this. So with those key takeaways, I move on to journey. Any thoughts till this point, or I move ahead? I guess I have just about 7 minutes. Okay. So snapshot of the journey. Where do we start? We start with simple questions. Questions that we all know as cybersecurity professionals. We ask the basic questions. Who, what, where? We ask basic questions, right? So what do we mean by this? If I double click, who is connecting? What is connecting? So if you look at the connected landscape that we have, the connected enterprise we have, which comprises of IT, IoT, all types of devices, the first question is, what is connecting? Where is it? Who is behind that device? Who is connecting? The very basic questions. The second is, you would want to double click, is this asset known? Is it my asset? Is it a rogue device? Is it compliant? Is it vulnerable? So kind of getting more information, right? Understanding, basically empowering you to take better decisions, more facts coming to you. And then you being able to take certain actions. Okay, I want to control now. I want to maybe remediate something. I want to block something, give restricted access to something. So the second now is the control, the second element. And after all of this, you would want to automate this. So right from asking those basic questions, getting the visibility, double clicking on them, understanding or assessing the risks. The third is taking those control actions, and control is not obviously all the time control or block. It can be block, remediate, report, anything. Or sometimes no action, just report. And lastly, build a workflow around this which can help you leverage your existing investments. Everybody has a lot of security tools, right? How can you orchestrate them? How can you kind of get more value out of them? So in a nutshell, what am I talking about? I'm talking about the first step is identification. Knowing what you have. Simple. Know your attack surface. What you have, whether you have a printer or a SCADA or a MRI machine or a IT device or a camera or whatever you have. First of all, know, identify what is there on your environment. Second, you would want to assess them. Now, before assessment, in fact, before identification and assessment, there's one more step. You would actually want to categorize them. Why? Because you need different enforcement methods. Because 5 fingers, different sizes. You cannot have the same control. Because you need different controls, as a precursor to getting to the control stage, you need to first categorize them. Okay, this is my printer. I'll not block a printer. This is a SCADA. I cannot block a SCADA. I can only, probably isolate it or report it. I cannot take an action. This is a laptop. Of course, I can block it. This is a desktop. I can remediate it. Maybe, trigger something else and take a remediation action and make it healthy. So that is the second step between the identification and the assessment, which is categorization or classification. The assessment, as the name says, simple, understand the risk, assess the posture, know what is wrong with the device, understand what is the vulnerability, understand how is it communicating, why are two devices talking to each other? If they are talking the language we want them to talk? Or there is some malicious communication? Just to give you a perspective, why should a system talk to an MRI machine? An MRI machine sending reports to a laptop is okay, but not the other way around. So the nature of communication, why are these devices talking? Assessing that. Also assessing the health and the vulnerability and the inherent challenges with the devices. The third is, as I said, you can even, in cases where you cannot really block, you probably, take a control action. I'm sorry, I think I just skipped the slide. Yep. And wherever you can enforce, you enforce the control. Where you can actually not enforce, like a case of a PLC or a SCADA, you take certain other actions. And lastly, orchestrated. So this is what we are talking in a nutshell. I have very limited time left, so I would probably run through this a little faster in case you have some questions at the end. Maybe I'm here. You can we can have a detailed discussion around this. So I'm just kind of double clicking on each of those areas which we spoke. So coming to identification. Now, how do you actually discover devices? Right? Well, agent comes as a thought, but will agents work on a printer? Will agents work on a SCADA? No. So then you need agentless. Okay. Now, will agentless alone help? May not. So you need both methods. Are two methods enough? Probably no. You need to understand more from the network. So we have about 20 plus active and passive techniques. Active techniques can work for an IT device. Can you do an active probing of a PLC or a SCADA? No. So we have active and passive techniques. And not one, not two, 20 techniques. How does it help you? If you rely on 1 or 2 or 3 techniques to actually discover what you have in your environment, you may still not get the right picture. But when you are dependent on 20 different ways, you kind of cover most of the cases and you get near accurate, complete visibility. So this is just an example, and this is an actual customer example, and there are a lot of examples in India also which we have engaged with customers, and I can share that with you. So if you look at this example, in all our organizations, I'm sure we agree that there are different sources of truth. How many devices? AD says 10,000. EDR says 11,000. Some other tool, HR portal, the HRMS tool says 11,200. What is the actual number? We don't really know. Now this can give you that actual number. This was one such scenario where we did an exercise, and without any agents, we could discover at least 20 to 25% more assets than what you could discover after combining multiple tools. And there are many such live examples in India as well, and we can share that with you offline. So, of course, this is a gap, and this gap determines what you do next. Because if we don't know what is our attack surface, what are we dealing with? If we think we are dealing with 10,000 systems, devices, and the number is 12, then the gap starts there itself. The second is classification, like I said earlier, which I've already discussed. So where we kind of categorize and put them in different buckets so that it becomes easy for you to understand what actions is to be taken on each one of them. Here, in this phase, we do an assessment. We do an assessment of the risk, understand whether the asset is compliant, whether it is in line with the policies that you have laid down. And this assessment works for managed devices, unmanaged devices, heterogeneous environment, managed switch, unmanaged switch, so on and so forth. You can check a lot of things, whether things are vulnerable, out of date, unauthorized, rogue device, check all of that. Mitigate them, remediate them, raise a ticket, patch them, so many things that you can actually do. So this basically gives you the power to actually control or take some action or respond to the problem. Lastly, automation. We would want to automate it. And as I said, the best way of automating is not doing it all yourself. Is by leveraging what you have. So I'm sure many of you have most of these tools, right? I mean, at least 5 or 6 of these tools are pretty relatable in your environment. Some firewall, some vulnerability assessment tool, some IoT devices, some tools, ITSM tools, so many different tools, right? So how do you actually integrate with them and make things happen? Everyday example, you understand that a device is not functioning or not compliant as per what you want it to be. You trigger an EDR agent to do something. It's not patched. You enforce a patch. You understand that OT device is vulnerable. You don't take an action, but you probably want to just segment them, put it in a different gap. How do you segment? Maybe you leverage a firewall which is there in that network. So you integrate with that firewall. So all these integrations actually help you in your everyday life to enable and automate what we've discussed so far. So in a nutshell, any device that you're talking about, whether it is IT, IoT, IOMT, your industrial control systems, any of those devices, we can help you, first of all, understand what you have. Second, give you an assessment of what risks they carry. Third, you can govern them, take actions, like block them, put them in a different network, just report them, remediate them, and then finally automate all of that. That's what we do in a nutshell. We've been doing this for quite some time. We've been in India for about 5 years. We have about 100 plus customers across sectors, whether it is banking, finance, manufacturing, IT, ITS, and even government. So we have customers across sectors, about 100 plus in India. Would love to share more things with you, but I think my time is already up. And yeah, I think the last session, so I don't want to, go on any further. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take that now, or maybe we can take it post this session. I pass it on back to Mark now, and so that I can hear his voice again.
Thank you very much, Subbu.